Morning, everybody. Chris here. Welcome back to 30-Day Excel Analyst. We're trying to transform your analytical skill set in 30 days. This is week 2. This is data management week. It's the first of our 4 key skill areas in Excel. And today we are getting into Power Query, one of the most powerful features of Excel, particularly if you're involved with data management. Now, I'm no Power Query expert, but I've had a good time in the past couple of days getting to know Power Query a bit. And we're going to go through 8 to 10 things that could take you minutes, hours in Excel. Power Query can do them for you at the click of a button. So if you're watching live, thanks so much for being with us live. Make sure you leave me a comment in the chat. I will deal with those after the first 10 minutes or so. And if you're watching on replay, a big welcome to you too. Leave me a comment below. Very happy to hear from you. I will get back to you there. So with that said, let's get into day 6, 30-Day Excel Analyst. As always, the resources are available. The link is in the video description below. Also got the series playlist there if you want to jump around the sessions, and they will stay up forever, really. So I hope you'll keep coming back to them as a source of, as a reference. So what kind of stuff can you do with Power Query? Well, I've also put a definition of Power Query in here. Power Query allows you to pull data from multiple data sources and to manipulate it into the layout you need. This is a very fundamental thing. So many people trying to do this in Excel. I'm sure you have too. Power Query could help you. That's what we did yesterday. Yesterday, we got data into our file. You can check out yesterday's session, of course. We're going to go through the basics today. The kind of thing that you might want to do, reordering columns. So your data source columns are in one order. You want to get them into a different order. Reordering columns is something you might want to do. Reversing the row order is something that's very easy to do in Power Query. Adding calculations, of course, you've got a data set, you want to do some simple calculations. That is possible with Power Query. Adding an index column just to give us a nice 1, 2, 3, 4, a nice sequence number for easy referencing. Cleaning up text. Yes, data cleansing is a huge part of data management in Excel. Power Query gives us some nice options for doing that. We can rename columns as they come in. We can pass out the text by a delimiter if you want to separate the text according to where the commas are, for example. Power Query can do that for you, passing out the text. And reformatting the date and time in the bottom right there. That's just an example of something you might want to do in Power Query. And, dates and times are always difficult to work with. So anyhow we can get, we're going to appreciate that, I'm sure. So this file, you can download the form response analysis file. What's this file all about? Well, you can go back to yesterday's session. We created an online questionnaire using Google Forms. We did it all live in the session, and I asked people to leave responses. So this is actually real data. So this is a real mechanism, if you like, in action. We've got the online form that's being brought into Excel via Power Query. Now, just quickly, this is what we did yesterday. How do you set up Power Query? Well, that word query describes Excel getting data from another data source. So if you go to Data tab, I just recommend taking the time to get to know the different data sources here. Now, yesterday, we did our get data from web. You can just see the little web symbol there. That allows us to get data from the internet. When we're using Google Forms, we get a link for sharing the Google form. We can drop that into the dialog box. That creates our query, that creates our link. But you can also, using Power Query, just get data from another Excel workbook. Could be a workbook on your system, could be a workbook on some kind of shared folder. That's what we do with one of our customers in their company shared drive. We use Power Query to bring data in. All kinds of, even getting data from PDF, that's not something that I've ever done. I've just noticed that. So a whole range of options here. So definitely spend time going through these, and you've got the option of combining queries together. So getting data from multiple data sources. So Excel meta skills, we've got to be able to debug, trial and error. So take the time to go through those. You'll probably only need 1 or 2 of those options. The option I always use is this get data from web option. We did that yesterday if you want to see me go through it literally step by step. So we've managed to get Power Query working. We've got the data in the file. You'll be able to do stuff now like updating or refreshing the data. If you go to query, you've got refresh here. I'm just going to click on it quickly to give you a feel of what it's like refreshing Power Query. Now, Power Query, as with all features in Excel, there's pros and cons. Yep, and it's clearly hugely powerful. Even just getting data into the file like that is really cool. But we can also do all kinds of stuff to manipulate the data. We'll get onto that in a second. Now, there's some cons to Power Query, and I've summarized these on a slide that we're going to look at the end of the session. But one con is it can take a little while to update, and you can see Excel is still running this background query. We've been going about 20 seconds so far. I find it's a little bit volatile. It's inconsistent in terms of how it updates. So you can see we've got some kind of error message there. You also get a weird and wonderful variety of error messages. Now, you might be fortunate you don't get too many error messages. I've been quite frustrated this year on client projects with the different error messages and with having to wait for data to come into the file. It's been not too bad. It's been okay for customers, but not ideal. Anyway, that's led me to replace some of our Power Query-based mechanisms with VBA. So being a critical consumer is another Excel meta skill. There's no panaceas in Excel. Nothing solves everything. Okay, so appreciate those pros and cons, and does it fit into what you're trying to do? That's what we're doing on 30-day Excel Analyst. So we want to get into the Power Query interface, and we want to understand a few of the things that we can do with Power Query. We're bringing the data in, but we can also perform operations on that data. I've got just a few of them that I've been using in the past couple of days on this slide, but in truth, there's many more things you could do. So let's say, what might we want to do here? Well, reordering columns is something people commonly want to do. So let's say this timestamp column is not so useful to us and our customer. So you can see I'm clicking and holding here, waiting for that horizontal scroll bar to come over. So let's suppose we just want to pop the timestamp column at the end. Hasn't quite got to the end there, has it? Let's see if we can put it right at the end. Anyway, if I bring this column in, that's going to put timestamps at the end. There you go. So reordering columns, something we can do quite easily with Power Query via this interface. Very intuitive, just to go ahead and reorder columns. Let's take a second to note here what's going on in the interface. We're just going to look out for two things. Firstly, the language. The language here. Does this look like normal Excel formula language? Not to me. It's actually a different language. It's much more a database type language than a formula or VBA type language. So just take a second to note that when we look at doing calculations, that's important because you can't just throw Excel formulae into Power Query. Second thing to note is this applied steps area. Now, this is a feature of Power Query I absolutely love. So whatever operation you're doing, and one operation we just did was to reorder the columns there, Power Query is going to note down what you're doing in this applied steps area here. Now, where you've got a little settings cog, that means you're able to go into that step and edit it. You can also reorder the steps. I believe you can put them up and down, and you can just cancel a step. So if you're thinking, I want to just undo that reordering, you can just click this cross here in the corner here. So the applied steps box, incredibly useful for managing those operations, what we're trying to do in Power Query. Okay, so we can reorder the columns. Reverse the row order. Sounds a little bit obscure, doesn't it? Reversing the row order, but the way our data is coming in, the most recent entries are down at the bottom. Do you want to do that to your customer? Your customer wants to read the most recent data coming into the file. Why not reverse the rows? That's how easy it is. We go to the transform tab, reverse the rows, and we can see down in the applied steps, it now says reversed rows. And looking at the timestamp column, we can see the later times there are now at the top of the data set. That's how easy it is, guys, with Power Query. Exciting stuff. Right, could we do some kind of calculation? Here we go. So if we go to add column and custom column here, we can have a look at some of these Power Query formulae. So let's go to add column, and let's suppose, what might we want to do? Well, there's more than one ways to do this, but let's suppose looking at this free text input that we had, and free text can be difficult to analyze, and there's some options for cleaning text and data cleansing and other things to do with text. You can see them here. And in transform text column, we've got some options here as well. We'll look at those before the end of the session. Yeah, so we've got some options for working with text. What might we want to do in terms of formulae? So I might want to count the length of these text inputs. So how many characters are in each text input? That's a first step when you're analyzing free text. How long is the text? How much text has been inputted? So to do that, we've gone to add column here. So we're going to have an additional column coming in automatically at the end of the data set. We're going to go to custom column, and then we're going to see custom column formula here. Okay, so when I was first using Power Query, I was thinking, okay, this is dead easy. I can just put an Excel formula in here and Power Query is going to understand that. Unfortunately, not as simple as that. We have to use the Power Query formula language. Now, we have a very helpful prompt here to learn more about Power Query formulas. I don't recommend all of the Microsoft help, but this I've found very helpful indeed. So you can see how many formulae we can access here. It gives you a sense of the range of functionality available to us. So let's go to text functions since we're working with text. And then we can see all of these text formulae are available to us. And you can see that they're doing very specific things here. Lots of formulae, so they get down to a real high level of detail and they can do very specific things. So it's well worth spending the time to go through this. An Excel meta skill is being able to get help online, of course, critically consume the content. And this, I would say, is a helpful piece of content. Now, what we want to do is return the number of characters in a text value. So let's see, can we do this text length formula? So back to Power Query now. Okay, let's give this a go. So text length is here. Then I've got to open the bracket, and then which column do we want to apply this to? Well, it's this feedback idea. Give Chris feedback for improving the program. And then I believe we have to close the brackets here. So you can see the syntax is a bit different to Excel formulae. Yeah, it's much more, as I said, it's a database style syntax here. We've got the column header inside these square brackets. We've got a hashtag here. I'm not sure of the significance of that, but we just need it because we need the right syntax in. And then we've got the rounded brackets as well. And then you can see I've managed to repeat the word text there. So how's this looking? Let's hit OK, and we can see, yeah, we've managed to put our custom formula in at the end there. And that column is going to be automatically added at the end of the data set by Power Query. Pretty cool stuff. Now, clearly, that's a fairly simple calculation. You saw just how many formulae are available there, hundreds of formulae. So there's very specific stuff to get exactly what you need. Cool. So adding calculations. What about adding an index column? Something a bit more simple and practical. So we moved our timestamp column from the beginning of the data set. I always have mixed feelings about this because Excel gives us a sequencer by default, doesn't it? It gives us a row number. But let's say the row number doesn't suffice. You might want to put a letter before the number, A1, A2, A3. You might have a code that your company uses. You might be able to program that using this index column idea. So we've got from 0, from 1, or some custom options there. I'm going to say what from 1 here, and the index column has gone in over here. Can I quickly move it? Let's have a look. Quickly moving it across. There must be an easier way to do this, to move columns around. So let me know in the comments. How should I actually be moving comments around? Be moving columns around. It seems very slow to do it this way. Anyway, managed to get our index column in there. And then, yeah, we can even get that prefix or suffix. Okay, we've got a starting index and an increment if you wanted to increment up by a certain number. We also have we can add a prefix or add a suffix here. I'm doing this to the index column. So for example, if your company had a particular code that you want to use, you can put those in and you can see we've now added a prefix column at the end in addition to the index column. So a fairly specific thing, but that's something we've had to do on projects. Might be something that helps you too. So you can put in an index column and add that prefix, suffix, whatever you want to do. Right, cleaning up text. Data cleansing is a huge part of data management in Excel. If we go to transform and text column, let's have a look here. So let's select a text column. Let's select our free text column here. So if we go to transform text column here, we've got some good options. Split the column, format, extract, parse. Let's see what format we've got here. Okay, so these format options, so trimming and cleaning. So trimming is going to get rid of, we can see the prompts on the screen there. It's going to remove leading and trailing white spaces from each cell in the selected column. So this happens all the time in Excel. People accidentally hit space after their data input. If their data, their inputs aren't validated properly, tomorrow or the next day, we'll be talking about cell-based validation in Excel. So we'll be working against that problem at source, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's the idea of trimming. It's moving, removing spaces. Cleaning is slightly different, also concerned with data cleansing, removing non-principal characters in the selected columns. Now, on the project I've mentioned a couple of times in the past few days, our project with our house builder over in Florida, we had this problem. We were using a mechanism like this. So we're using forms, we're getting data into the file, and then one of the entries, a bit like this free text entry, one of the entries we use to save a file as a PDF. So with VBA, on the basis of the inputs, we go and create a report, and then we put that report into a PDF. That's an example of how you can combine this mechanism using online questionnaire and Power Query with VBA. As I said yesterday, it can be a beautiful combination. We had a situation where sometimes we were getting an error because the PDF file wouldn't save because there was an unprintable character. There was an unprintable character in the save name. So that's why you need something like clean. Clean is going to get rid of those non-printable characters. Trim's going to get rid of those spaces, those white spaces as they're termed here. Very useful data cleansing option there for us. Both of those data cleansing options there are available via Excel formally. Between now and the end of the week, we'll also look at the options available to us for using Excel formally for data cleansing. So transform and text column, renaming the columns. Again, a simple thing. So for example, this column, if we're using an online survey like this, Google Forms, then automatically the question is going to become the name of the column. That's not very convenient, is it? Because the question has lots of text. We'd want to change that. So we could say something like free text feedback here. You might want something even shorter than that, free text feedback. But once again, it's very practical, intuitive, a bit like moving the columns around. You can just double click on the column header there and rename it. What else might you want to do? Well, parsing out text. If you go to add column and extract, we get to parse out text. But what does parsing out text actually mean? Well, let's go to our entry. We had a live on replay question. Yes, we did here, live and on replay. So this is the question mode where you're using checkboxes. And you can go to yesterday's session where I set up the online form. I use checkboxes. So the playlist for this series is in the video description below. You just go to session 5. You'll be able to see me do that. It can be difficult though. It can be difficult analyzing data like this where you've got two entries in the same column. So where someone ticks live and on replay because they're watching live and they're watching on replay, fantastic, by the way. Thank you so much for doing that. I hope you're getting value out of this program. This isn't particularly easy to analyze. It would be easier to have live in one column and on replay in the next column to separate those entries out over two columns. So to do that, we can go to text column extract, is it? Yeah, extract. Now we've got some good options here. We've actually got length there. So we don't even need to use that text length formula to get the number of characters. We could just go through extract there. You could get the first or last characters. I'm going to go for text. Let's go for text between delimiters. Let's see if this works. So the delimiter is the character that you're using that's being used to split up the text effectively. So we can see we've got a comma here, and that comma is splitting up live from on replay. Let's see if I just put the start delimiter here, what's going to happen? Okay, let's cancel that actually. So let's try extract and let's go for text after delimiter. Let's try this. So this should take the text after the comma. So where we've got live and on replay, it should take the on replay portion and put it into another column. Let's go ahead and hit OK there. And you can see that we've got an additional column here. And now we can see it's not an additional column, is it? Actually, it's just manipulated that column. And we can see it says on replay there. So if you wanted both columns there, could you do this with add column? Yeah, you could do this with add column. So you can see I've done that in the same column. So that column has effectively been overwritten. If you go through the add column ribbon and go to extract, you'll be able to do the same thing and have a column appearing at the end of the data there. Okay, pretty cool. So any questions, guys? Any questions so far about Power Query? Once you've worked through the steps, and remember, you've got all of your applied steps. We've got our applied steps box in the bottom right corner. You can delete steps there. You can edit steps. Incredibly useful. You can manage it all through applied steps. And now we can see what we did. It's not coming through yet. So you can see live, it's live TV. We're experiencing some problems with Power Query. So we're running background query here. We can click to cancel. I don't know if it's come through. Is it going to come through? I'm not sure. Yeah, so using Power Query on projects, this is what it's like sometimes, waiting for data to update. Is it going to update, particularly when you're getting data from online sources? You're going to have to experiment yourself. Is that manageable for you? If it's not manageable, then you'll have to look at an alternative approach. And my chosen alternative is often Excel VBA. So that's a nice segue, perhaps, to our final discussion. So critical thinking is one of our Excel meta skills. So nothing I teach you, nothing, guys, am I saying this is amazing and this is going to fix everything for you. The way we approach it on 30-day Excel Analysts, we're critical consumers and critical thinkers. Everything in Excel has its pros and cons. This is such an Excel superpower. I'm not devoted to anything, not even VBA. It's not a case of belief in something and blind faith in something. It's a case of understanding the pros and cons. So let's go through the pros and cons of Power Query. It deals with a long-term drawback of Excel importing data without copy paste. So it was a bit of a game changer when Power Query came in, being able to get those data sets in. It meant the manual operation of going and getting data and pulling it in don't have to do that so much. So that clearly is a big win. It links desktop Excel to online data sources. And as I've explained in this session, that's a winning combo, because if we're in desktop Excel as opposed to online Excel, we can access VBA combined with these online data sources, with Power Query doing a bit of work in there, but not too much work, because as you can feel, it can slow things down. I found linking VBA in there at the end could be an absolute winning combination. Lots of options for manipulating the data, and some of those options are quite intuitive and straightforward. Changing the column headers, very intuitive to do in the Power Query interface, moving the columns around. Yeah, it took me a while, but I'm not a Power Query expert. I'm sure there's a quicker way to do that, to move a column from the beginning to the end of the data set. And a broad range of functions. You saw the list of formulae there. We just had a fraction of the formulae available. So there is a broad range of functionality. Does that mean you can get done exactly what you want to get done? I'm not sure. You might have to reach for Excel formulae, Excel modeling skills, and Excel VBA. Who knows? But there is a broad range of functionality. So the simple stuff at least should be covered. To some extent, replicates the power of VBA without having to use VBA. The operative words here are to some extent. Some people out there will be saying, oh, Power Query is here now, we don't need VBA. That's not true. Power Query covers a fairly specific segment of Excel practice to do with data management. Excel VBA, we can do far, far more with, but Excel VBA is a programming language, is also more complicated. So the cons, one of the reasons I'm struggling with Power Query is when you open the Excel file, certainly if you work with an online source, you're going to get that data connections notification. So when you open the Excel file, it's going to say, do you want to enable the data connections? That can be annoying. Various other error messages, suspicious data source, etc. We were experiencing one today. I don't mind error messages so much, and it's one of our Excel meta skills to be able to deal with error messages, of course. It's just the error messages seem very obscure, and a bit strange and a little bit scary. So how are you going to deal with that? And how's your customer going to deal with that if you're creating work for somebody else? It will make the file less efficient. So Power Query, doing all those calculations, operations in the background, that will slow down the file. Though the range of functionality is broad, it won't help much with other areas of practice, e.g. modeling. So never forget, guys, never forget the 4 skill areas: data management, data analysis, modeling, automation. Power Query is going to help you with data management. It also automates a little bit. It does a few calculations, so it does a little bit of modeling, doesn't really do data analysis. So it really helps with data management, and it can become problematic. The same with VBA. It becomes problematic when people get a bit addicted to Power Query and start using it for stuff that it isn't really designed for. So 30-day Excel Analyst, it's all about working from the whole to the parts, having that overview. If you've got that overview, you can work out how Power Query fits into your Excel practice and the work that you're trying to do. Okay, guys, that concludes our presentation today. Let's go through the chat. Let's say some hellos, and any final questions in the chat, guys, make sure you put them in. Jorgen's with us. Fantastic, Jorgen. Let's salute the general. Good to see you. Heavy Downpour is with us. You've been with us for a few sessions now. Heavy Downpour. I really appreciate your company. Arnie with us, tuning in from Sydney. Fantastic. Bert is with us. How are you doing, Bert? I'm still getting over the revelation yesterday about using... No, this is Kieran. Sorry, this is not Bert. Bert, sorry, I'm getting you confused with Kieran. Kieran, the revelation about having an even number of options. You always have 4 options, not 5 on questionnaire. So people have to go, broadly speaking, negative or positive. They can't go down the middle. Never realized that. Fantastic stuff. Dave, how are you doing? Good to have you with us. Michael tuning in from Australia as well. Always good to see you. Michael, Michelle said, Michelle, how are you doing? Now, Michelle really is a long-term supporter of the channel. Michelle's been watching for 7 or 8 years, I think. So great to see you, Michelle, as always. And let's have some questions. Okay, so Michael's saying, yeah, in order to move the columns, click on the column, then drop down, then move to beginning. Okay, so this is how we can do it in Power Query. Power Query interface, there's an option in the column drop down to move to beginning. Welcome to Liju tuning in. How are you doing from India? Good to see you. And Heavy Downpour says, question, is there any way to do all these Power Query operations with VBA code? Yes, everything we've done is possible with VBA. Pretty much anything you'll do in Excel is possible with VBA. So the question, we're going to deal with this question through the course. The question is, do you want to learn VBA at all? How deep do you want to go with VBA? And even if, like me, you're in strong command of the VBA language, do you want to use it? Yeah, for this kind of operation, maybe it's better to use Power Query, because if you're using VBA, well, that means the file can only be used on desktop Excel, for example. So there's cons to VBA as well. So VBA can do pretty much everything, but that doesn't mean we should be doing everything with VBA. But yes, theoretically, anything you do in Power Query could be done in VBA. The question is, which tool is the best tool to use? And I do it both ways, depending on the situation. And Heavy Downpour says, yes, I left some data cleansing content intentionally for you yesterday. Absolutely. In Power Query, data cleansing, text cleansing, this is, how would you say, the wheelhouse? That's a bit of an American phrase. This is a very core thing, basic thing that we can do with Power Query. Right, fantastic, guys. Thanks so much for watching live. If you're watching on replay, leave me a comment below. I will get back to you in the comments tomorrow. We will continue with our data management week in Excel. I'll see you then.